You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello, you are listening to Orange County's longest running business talk show. And yes, I am your host, Rick Franzi. And boy, do we have a good show for you today. Why do you ask? That's a fair question, because Ellie Edwards, who is the CEO of Groundswell, is our guest. Ellie, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It's good to have you here. We love to feature worthy organizations throughout Orange County on our program. And let's start with you, though, and tell us a bit about your journey to the organization.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm an Orange County native. I have pretty much lived here my whole life, except for my college years. And when I left for that time, I earned an ethnic studies degree and an American studies degree, and tried to figure out how can I take this and actually make a living. And I was fortunate enough to have returned to Orange County and found this organization all those years ago. At the time, it was called OC Human Relations. And I joined the organization working with young people in schools, doing leadership programs, working with teachers and administrators to make schools safe and respectful for everyone. We wanted to create and still want to create places where students can thrive. And in that role, I kind of moved up to coordinating more programs and became the program director, and just kind of accepted a new challenge, I would say, every handful of years. So for about 7 years, I was the deputy director under our founder and got to really see so much of how he ran the organization firsthand, and, followed into his footsteps eventually. But just to date myself, it was so exciting to turn that degree into meaningful work that the first time I ever got a business card, I taped it to a piece of paper and faxed it to my parents to show that I felt legitimate in the world.
Right. Well, did you expect when you joined the organization that all these years later you would be leading it?
Oh my gosh, it's kind of a humbling story now, but the person who hired me, Tina Fernandez at the time, said, okay, we're glad you're willing to accept the offer. We have to let you know we ask for a verbal 2-year commitment. And I thought at the time, like, well, that kind of feels like a lot. I'm not sure. Like, was this a good idea? I was like, little did I know I would spend so many years. So that was in the late 90s. So it's been a long time.
So when you ascended to the position of CEO, is that a different job than anything else you had in the organization up to that point?
Yeah, I didn't realize it would be. As I shared, I worked so closely with our founder. But I guess what I didn't understand at the time is I was a manager, and moving from manager to CEO is a different skill set. As a manager, I was, I think, good at keeping things moving forward, but ultimately I was executing on someone else's vision. And to then be the keeper of the vision, and even, I mean, we believe in lots of collaboration and co-creation in our organization, but someone still is sort of like the driver of that, holds the vision, shares the vision. And I think that's still a place that I'm growing into. But it was really helpful to me to realize that I needed to make that change, and I couldn't just keep the ship sailing, because if that's all I did, we wouldn't have a direction to go in. We would just be sort of afloat.
I've also heard from other guests who've had a similar path, ascending into the CEO, president, top job, that the job is harder because you have good people, and the things they're bringing to you to figure out, they've already tried to figure out. So you're like working on challenging things all the time, because the easier stuff gets settled out in the different departments. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I've heard different people talk about kind of by the time it gets to that level, it's a different type of challenge you're trying to figure out. I think also, we're a smaller organization, 30 people or so. sometimes it's also filtering out, no, you can make that decision. I don't need to weigh in on everything. And most people are happy to have been given that license to work on their own. So it's, the prioritizing is important. And having been in the organization for so long, I have to remember not to also respond with, we tried that in 2000, and not just be a wet blanket all the time. Back in my day type of stories. But yeah, you really are working through things that probably that person had tried to figure out on their team collaboratively. But we have a large leadership team. We're really thoughtful. We spend a lot of time together. And I think we've done a pretty good job of giving each other license to, like, just try this. And it's hard. I think, many of us we're really committed for personal reasons, so we can get perfectionistic. But we try to kind of lean into, like, let's not let perfection be our enemy. Let's try some things. Let's experiment. If we screw up, we'll figure out how we can make it right. Because failure, conflict, those things are fairly inevitable. So if we continue to see them as inevitable, but also inevitable as opportunities, I think it moves us forward in a different way than just feeling like, in this role, you can very much feel like you're supposed to have all the answers.
Right.
So just the first step of, like, I don't really know. What does everyone else think about that? Sometimes just you can really share that with folks pretty quickly. So try to stay in that place. But like many other people, sometimes it gets the best of me. If the question feels really important, I'll be like, oh, I have to know. And I got to pull myself out of that, take a pause and pull myself out of that.
So let's talk about the organization. Let's talk about Groundswell. Share with us the founder's vision. Why was the organization created? And what is your current mission and vision for the organization?
So in 1971, the Board of Supervisors created the Orange County Commission on Human Relations. And it's a body of 11 volunteers who advise up to the Board of Supervisors on issues of prejudice, intolerance, and conflict. And in the late 80s, the county staff that was assigned to that commission wanted to expand the role of the commission. Government commissions are usually responsive versus having the opportunity to be proactive or work on prevention. And so when the staff wanted to do more of that kind of work, the story as I recall it, I wasn't there, is that the board said, we love that idea, but you're going to have to find the funding for it, that we can't increase your budget. So public-private partnerships were in vogue at the time, and Rusty Kennedy, our founder, went out with some like-minded folks and created the 501c3. I think at the time they thought, oh, here's just like a little way to take donations from people who would like to do these projects with us. And over time, the nonprofit work became 10 times bigger, at least from a budgetary standpoint, and then even more, 30 times bigger than the work with the county. And so at the time, we started getting calls from schools. There were challenges in schools with the changing demographics, and staff was going out and responding. They were doing dialogues. They were building bridges. The old tagline was building bridges of understanding. And lo and behold, kind of programs formed organically that were able to not just respond to those tensions, but start going in proactively, bringing young people together, talking about differences, and just building that awareness that, hey, we can appreciate differences and we can appreciate what we have in common. And that turned into, conflict mediation work and training and tracking hate activity and hate crime for the County of Orange. So our origin story is with the county, but we are 100% nonprofit now. And then a couple of years ago, we decided to kind of examine our mission and vision, and we changed those, and it really moved us, we felt, into a new era of the organization. So we decided to go for a full rebrand, name change and all. And that's when we became Groundswell. And our vision now is to co-create a world where all people realize belonging. So we're trying to do that by bringing diverse people together for all kinds of reasons. So I like to say we do this kind of work in classrooms, courtrooms, boardrooms, living rooms, and beyond. But really, belonging is, I think, most people have a visceral response to that. They've experienced that sense, and they've experienced what it's like to be excluded or othered or dehumanized. So my hope is that for many people, they hear that word and they go, "Oh yeah, I know." Even if I don't know exactly your organization, I get why that feeling of belonging matters.
That is impactful and impressive to me that in 1971, Orange County was grappling with this and the county wanted to address it. I mean, that feels like way ahead of their time. Maybe not, but
Well, I think that this was kind of as the civil rights era, the tail end of the civil rights era, and there were major cities, right, that experienced a lot of turmoil, strife, riots, unrest, and I think at the time the Board of Supervisors was thinking like, how can we be more either prepared or preventative around this? Like, what could we have community members that would bring information knowledge to us, like a liaison between community and decision makers? And so, yeah, they really wanted to make sure that and as it grew, then that also became a body that community could go to first. Like, hey, can the Human Relations Commission help me with something? And if not, sometimes things went up to the Board of Supervisors. But there've been incredible people who have volunteered for that commission and continue to over the years.
And it feels like the need that they saw in 1971 is still here today in 2024.
Yes, unfortunately, that's true. If you're a fan of gallows humor, we sort of say job security is built into our industry because different, the challenges remain. Some have evolved, some we understand with more nuance and complexity, and but it is still a challenge to help people see each other as human across those differences, and to not, I guess, make meaning of those differences in a negative way, right? Many of the differences that humans experience are how we decide to view them, how we have labeled one another or labeled a characteristic, et cetera. So a lot of the times the work you're doing is actually around unlearning some of the ways that we've made meaning around difference and relearning a new way of seeing those differences.
I love your vocabulary around this. It's really approachable, and thank you for being on the show today. Changing direction a little bit, if I could, Ellie. Piece of business advice, something that maybe you picked up along the way that you could pass on to our audience?
So this one will be good for all the people pleasers out there. I have a coach who also founded a nonprofit, and she's consistently reminding me to think about what are the things that I and only I can do, and to prioritize those items and to delegate things that others can do. And this is definitely still a work in progress for me. But I have tended to see things as like, well, I can do that too. But if I spend all my time doing those things that anyone can do, I won't have time for the things that only I can do. And so I'm always trying to embody that. And I'm growing, but as a people pleaser, it's much easier to say I'll do that than it is to delegate. So I think that is really important. And I used to only be able to see that as sort of like unburdening someone, but I think there's lots of opportunities to show people that you trust them and their ability to handle important tasks in the organization. And so that's been helpful for me.
Yeah, I think delegating, especially in your role, is critical. Finding the right people to delegate it to, and then giving them the responsibility and the authority to actually do something and make a decision it's a great growth opportunity. Builds bench strength too, potentially within the organization.
Oh yeah, and I have to say, if anyone on our team is watching, They are amazing and awesome, and I do have a wonderful group of people around me that probably are like, "Yeah, why aren't you asking us to do more of this stuff?" Because they absolutely, show up when you need that kind of support.
Because nobody likes to work for a micromanager. That's universal at any level of the organization.
Right.
That's some of the hardest people to work for are
Mhm.
those people who refuse to allow people to grow. Let's talk about a challenge that maybe is facing the organization today and how you're dealing with it, and just sort
Mhm.
of articulate it for our audience, if you would.
I think in the last couple of years, it's really the cost of living for our
Mm,
employees. It's really, um, important to me that the people that work for us have the choice to live in Orange County. They may not choose to live in Orange County. We have people that drive in from other places, and we have a couple that work remotely. But I don't really think we're there, to be honest, and it's really hard to keep up. All of the indicators that were, maybe 4 years old, we were on it. I felt really good about how we were maintaining those wages, and then everything changed so much. At the last community indicators report last month, I think the median home price in Orange County was 1.4 million. The year before that, the salary that it would take to have the median one bedroom apartment in Orange County was, I think, 75,000. I'm sure it's
wow.
gone up since then.
Wow.
So we try, we cannot just say, oh, we're maybe paying more than people in our industry. I think it's really important we keep up with that. And we have raised our salaries, but we are not keeping up in the way that we would like to. And every time we raise it, it's like we're just, we're still straggling. And so the challenge is that nonprofits are often doing work that nobody else is doing, and I feel that we should get that same support and importance in our communities. So I don't want our folks to feel as though their work is not important. It's They're experts, they're innovative, they're committed. They're all the things that you would expect someone to um, be doing to earn a competitive salary. So keeping up with that is really hard. The other challenge for us is after the death of George Floyd, we were inundated with calls for support, and we had organizations saying like, our employees are struggling with what's happening in the world. Like, can you help us provide um, a place for them to be heard? Or we want to do training. How can we make sure that our culture serves everyone in the organization? And so we started really pivoting from being mostly conveners and facilitators of dialogue to also being trainers, being experts in our field. And so that work like it's broadly labeled DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And um, honestly, when people started using that term to reference our work, we kind of went with it. We thought, well, I don't know, that's really who we are, but it's broadly understood. So if that helps people understand who we are, we'll do that. We actually thought it was kind of it didn't carry enough weight as a term, not anticipating it would be really controversial a couple of years later and the subject of different pieces of legislation across the country. So I think letting people know that what we do is not scary, or demystifying the idea of DEI, that it's about, you have to fire all these people and hire all those people. What we do with most organizations is start with conversations around trust and communication.
Mm.
Do the people that work for you feel like you communicate well in the organization, and do they trust that communication? And if you can start from that place, you can take on so many more things. We would never walk into an organization and say like, how's everyone doing? Let's talk about discrimination in your organization, or how are salaries looking? It's really about trying to see what an organization's goals are and how we can support that. So I think we're probably going to have a lot of work to do in the upcoming or in the near future to just make sure we're communicating clearly that our goal is really around creating great places for people to do great work. And you can do that without firing anyone, without hiring anyone. Everyone can start where they're at by
Mhm.
just thinking about things like building communication, building trust. Um, and it's not scary, or it doesn't have to be scary, right? For the most part, people work with us feel like they understand their team better, that they can work more closely together, or they can approach conflict in a new way where it was scary before. Now it feels like it can be a bridge to something better. So I think those are kind of the key things that I'm thinking about.
Building off of trust and having good communication. It sounds so obvious, but it is challenging many times in organizations. And trust, I believe, is the foundation of any relationship.
Mhm.
And it really is important to make sure you have that. And sometimes leaders assume they have it, and they really should validate that. And if they need to work on it.
Yeah, and I think we're also in an era of figuring out what trust means in professional relationships. People sometimes mistake it as like, I'm trying to get you to, like, we talk about leaders being vulnerable.
Mhm.
Everyone should know everything about you, and you you have to have personal relationships with everyone. Not all people want those kind of relationships at work,
Right.
but they still want to feel trusted at work. They still want to feel like they can, largely not have to pretend they're someone else, right? So just opening up that space, generally it benefits everyone in the organization if you do it well. It's the same at the schools we work at. If you have young people who feel safe at school, they learn. If they don't feel safe, they can't integrate new knowledge. They
Mhm.
just can't. You go in fight or flight mode and your executive function goes to sleep. Can't do it. So it's not necessarily about some uh blaming or shaming, right? Everyone benefits when students feel safe at school. That's just true. So taking some of that approach, that's kind of like, this is the community of care, and it should be everyone,
Mhm.
that we address in those processes.
So I know you have a couple things going on. I wanted to ask you to maybe speak to them. One is the Shaping Tomorrow, and then in May you're going to have your Wave of Hope. Could you give us a bit about
Yeah.
each of those?
Yeah, so the Shaping Tomorrow series was kind of our effort to say, here's what we'd like to share with community. Here's what we think is an offering that can support folks. A lot of people who work with us, it's because their school or their workplace kind of signed up for some of our programming, but we want to make sure that we're also trying to reach the community more broadly. So we set up these roughly monthly webinars just to provide support and information for people who are looking to maybe make a difference in their sphere of influence. So, for example, last month we did our presentation on the civil rights history of Orange County. Later this month, I think it's this week actually, we're doing one on self care, and so it's just an opportunity to learn. Once people register, I think they can watch it live or they can watch it later. And then in May, our Wave of Hope Gala is a chance for us to really spotlight the work that we do with schools and with youth. We'll be honoring some schools and school leaders and young people who are um, really creating spaces of belonging at their school, that are doing special programs to make sure that young people have second chances, third chances, fourth chances to be successful and to thrive. Um, it's a fundraiser for our organization, for our youth and education programs. And I have to tell you, having one of the benefits of being at the organization so long is I have now seen generations of young people that were in these programs go on to lead organizations. I mean, I've had some of them come ask me for money at their nonprofits that they're at now. We've hired like a half a dozen of those young people to work for us over the years. I mean, I'm so proud of all of these folks that I saw, maybe in the ninth grade. I have two that I met in the ninth grade that are board members for us now.
Wow.
So you can see that night what we're doing, but really the ripples, they just carry on throughout Orange County and frankly across the nation. These folks are out everywhere doing this good work.
And people can learn more about both of those when a little bit later in the interview, I'm going to ask you to give your website and how people can learn more about your organization. So don't worry, ladies and gentlemen, you'll be able to find it out. Just hold on. I have a couple things left that I did want to talk to you about. And one is your view on artificial intelligence. And if you could just share your perspective with our audience, I would appreciate it.
I think my view is that I'm not qualified to offer much of a view at this point. I do hope that we find some ways to leverage this for efficiencies in our organizations. Nonprofits run on shoestring budgets for infrastructure. It's not exciting to fund computers, but we can be helped by this. I think for us, one of the next frontiers is going to be online learning. So I think that there are ways that we can leverage AI to make sure that if folks want the training that we typically do in person, if they want it online, on demand in the future, that we can use some of those tools to move that forward. But right now it's pretty new. It's pretty new for us. We're sort of experimenting. Like, here's a topic I want to, send a newsletter out on and see what Chat GPT would write for us and things like that. But yeah, I've got, we run the gamut. We've got some who are like, please don't even say AI in my presence, and others that are like, first day I got my Chat GPT account and I've been, experimenting. So we're in the middle, but I do think there's ways that we can leverage it for sure. And I'm hoping other nonprofits will kind of dip their toe in that more and lead the way.
Excellent. Okay, so let's bring it home with the future. Talk to us about, as CEO of Groundswell, what's your vision for the future?
So I talked a little bit about this focus on belonging, and what I really want to be able to keep expanding this and keep either, I guess you could say teaching it or co-creating, but moving this forward, because I think it's going to be terminology and not just the words that we say, but the ideas behind it that create just a brighter future that everyone sees themselves in, right? Not just some people come along. Belonging is not just like, yes, I'm so excited for when everyone sees it my way and we all belong, right? Belonging is like truly challenging ourselves to be like, I deeply disagree with you, and I am committed to seeing your humanity, regardless of those divisions. And I'm even interested in seeing how we can build something together, or what we can find in common. We sometimes reference the work of the Belonging and Othering Institute, and the director there recently said in an interview, in belonging, there are no villains. So to step from where we often see each other in this country right now into a place of belonging where there are no villains, that, to me, that's profound. So if we can provide the programming, the conversation, the dialogue that moves people from suspicion to curiosity, I'm there for it. I'm excited about it.
As I said a little earlier, I think the times need this, and I really am glad this is where you're focusing your organization. If someone would like to connect with you or learn more about Groundswell, how do they do it?
Sure. So I am around on LinkedIn, just as Alison Edwards, and our website is wearegroundswell.org. Don't just type in Groundswell, because I think you'll get solar panels. So We Are Groundswell is .org is us. We are doing training and community dialogues all the time. We would welcome anyone's interest in participation in those. And if you want to come to the gala, certainly, like any good nonprofit, we have sponsorship opportunities.
All right. Well, I have thoroughly enjoyed our time together. I told the people at the top of the hour the show was going to be a good one, and you did not disappoint, Ellie. Thank you for your time. I know you're super busy.
Thank you so much.
And thank you to the audience. You're a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show and podcast. Ellie's episode joins our catalog of 1,500 plus interviews we've done over the years. If you happen to be an Orange County entrepreneur or a nonprofit leader, and you too would like to share your story with our audience, it's really easy. If we're not already connected on LinkedIn, reach out to me. I'm Rick, R-I-C, Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I. Let me know of your interest. Between Haley, our producer, and myself, we can get you prepared to be a future guest on the show. And until the next time we all have a chance to be together, I hope all of your business decisions moves your organization in a positive direction.